Welcome to In the Zone, brought to you by U.S. Construction Zone, bringing you strategies for success with construction innovators and change makers, including In the Zone peer-nominated national award winners. Here are your hosts, Jeremy and Valerie Owens.
Everybody, welcome to In the Zone with Jeremy and Valerie Owens.
Thanks for being here. Welcome back.
We're excited today. We have a wonderful guest, Brent Darnell, who is an outstanding speaker, author,
business coach, playwright. We didn't learn that. He's a playwright.
And
publisher.
Exactly. And a strong proponent on emotional intelligence to improving performance in the construction industry and businesses. And so we're going to talk today about different ways that we can proactively approach the mental health aspect of business, preventing such topics as, well, not preventing topics, encouraging the discussion of topics around mental health. One of the things, again, that we do want to just serve as a warning / courtesy reminder is that when we discuss mental health generally, we will bring up potentially the topic of suicide. And so we do touch on it briefly. It's not focused on. However, it is touched on very briefly. And so we want to make sure that if you're sensitive to that topic and want to avoid listening, that you're aware that it will be discussed in our conversation today.
Oh, you're good at those warnings. You're good at those. We need to come up with a name for our studio. We should be like Hot Yoga Studio. It's so hot in here.
I know.
At all times. And I just looked at my picture on the screen. I'm glistening. I'm usually not glistening, but I am. But back to Brent. Yes, we enjoyed his conversation immensely, and I don't think we need to talk too much about what it's going to be, but I do want you to tune in. I mean, all the topics about prevention, the mentality in construction industry, what we can do to improve as managers, as executives, how we just start the conversation with our employees, with our team, with our crews, to create loyalty and to really get to know them better and actually ask them about their families and about their lives and how can we actually support each other in life as opposed to just dollar signs and price per square and all the things that we're talking about. So definitely tune in and like Brent says in the podcast, he's got a lot of resources on his website, brentdarnell.com/resources. Is that correct? Is that what you heard? I believe so. Or brentdarnell.com. So again, enjoy the podcast with Brent Darnell. Okay, welcome back. Brent Darnell is president of Brent Darnell International. Through one-on-one coaching, leadership development training programs, and project-based programs, Brent teaches clients to communicate, maintain great relationships, and understand how to leverage emotional intelligence to improve performance. Brent earned his bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology in 1981 and began his own construction career. He was an MEP coordinator and senior project manager on complicated projects like the Brooke Army Medical Center and housing for the 1996 Summer Olympic Village. Because of these firsthand experiences, Brent writes and speaks with a deep understanding of his audience and the problems they commonly face. Brent has written 8 books and speaks to audience across the country. Please help me welcome Brent Darnell. Brent, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
I don't know if you're the same, that every time someone does a bio on me, it's so unusual. I was telling somebody the other day, I'm like, can I get a copy of that so I can run it in a loop inside my house so that my family can hear it?
Exactly. Like, who is that dude they're talking about, right?
Exactly.
That sounds like a really cool guy.
I'd like to do the dishes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
My kids would roll their eyes so deeply.
Yeah. My wife does that. She goes, yeah, you want to put all that in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Some marketing person probably came up with that, but
well,
at some point.
Thank you for being here. We know it's close to the holidays, so Merry Christmas to you and your family, and thanks
Same
for
to you.
So I want to jump right into our first question here. We have a very similar upbringing in construction in that we're both in third generation, and I want you to describe, what you learned from your grandfather and your father, and then I guess what was the moment that you decided to serve the construction industry?
Well, my grandfather, it was always hard work. He was just a hard working guy. He raised 10 kids, most of those during the Depression, back in the late 20s through the 30s, and then through the World War II and all that. So he was always scrambling, always juking, always finding the next opportunity, always looking for whatever the next thing is to put food on the table and keep a roof over everybody's head. And my dad's the oldest of the 10 kids. One died early, like in early childhood. So he was the oldest of 9. And he grew up really poor, you can imagine, with that many kids and Depression era. And he was so poor, he quit school very early, like about 6th grade, because he was ashamed he couldn't buy the school lunches. He had to bring his lunch, and his clothes were pretty awful, and he quit. And a couple of years later, he lied about his age and joined the Merchant Marines during World War II, and did that and traveled the world and sent a lot of money home to help, all his brothers and sisters and mom and dad. And then when he got back from World War II, he had in Mobile, Alabama, there were 2 jobs, pretty much. You could work at one of the paper mills, or you could work at the shipyard. And the shipyard was kind of shutting down because the war was over. So he went to one of the paper mills and lasted about 3 days and said, you know what, I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. So he started working as a carpenter. And his dad was a carpenter and painter. So he was a form carpenter on these little 2-lane bridges in South Alabama. Wow. And that's where he started. And he got up to really high levels of his career, like VP level, because he wasn't an educated guy, but he was a really smart guy. But he was also really great with people. Mm-hmm. And people loved my dad, and they loved working for him, and he could motivate people, and they sent him to all the problem jobs, and he could get the job straightened out, by digging into what's going on with it's always people issues, right? I mean, yes. He could nail those down and get those worked out. So he became kind of the job whisperer, and he could straighten out any problematic project. Yeah. And, of course, for me, the whole idea of watching a building erupt from the ground and be finished was just miraculous to me as a kid. And of course, when you drive past, that's Dad's job. That's Dad's build. Dad built that building, right? So that was the culture around the construction. And this was before OSHA. So I have 3 brothers, and we would go up on the weekends in the buck hoist and run around up on the floors of the building, right?
No safety issues there. Right?
No, not at all. Mom being terrified on the ground, looking up, hoping one wasn't going to wander over that little thin, little cable that separated us from certain death.
Yes.
So it was always a fascination, a miracle. So when I was old enough to work, it was either fast food at minimum wage, which I think back then was about $1.75 an hour, or making like $6 an hour on a construction project as a laborer, carpenter's helper. Yeah. And you build some muscles and get a tan, and all these added benefits. So I just started really falling in love with the industry. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go into the industry when I was at Georgia Tech, but the guys told me, look, I even asked, should I go into building construction or architecture? And he said, if you know you want to do construction, do that. Yeah. If you don't, then you probably should get a more general engineering degree so you could go into anything you want. So he recommended mechanical. So I did that because I wasn't sure at that point. But then I started getting all these great jobs out of school during a really difficult, this was early 80s,
Oh.
Right.
Total
high inflation.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Oil crisis and horrible unemployment. And so I was getting really good offers working as like MEP guy, and started my career as an MEP coordinator, and then got into project management and kept working up from there. So that's how that all came about.
Very cool. Very cool. Your dad sounds a lot like my dad in that a lot of people liked him. We still send him into the troubled clients' houses. So
Yeah.
same thing. Yep. Yep.
Not all of them. Don't worry. You've seen Kurt. So, Brent, you have a mission statement that I was reading through and absolutely love. We too have one for 3G and U.S. Construction Zone, and it's very similar in some of the ways. But what I love so much about yours, I'll read it here. The mission statement says to help transform the construction industry to be more collaborative, more relationship driven, more lean, and more fun, with a focus on health, wellness, and peak performance. And I just love that, especially the aspect of adding fun in there. I think in the professional industry, so many people avoid that word as if, it shouldn't be in there. And yet that is so important for mental health and keeping stress levels down. And so what was it that inspired this mission statement? And was it your upbringing, your experience? Tell us more about that.
Well, I think it's all of that. Plus, when you grow up in the industry and you work in the industry your entire life, you see things that you love and you see things that probably could be better. And the things I loved was, projects and building something from nothing, and the collaborative nature of it, and the camaraderie involved, and the good-natured kidding that's involved, and all those wonderful things. And the downside was it's stressful, and people are like, you see people that look 60 years old and they're in their 30s, or 40s. It kind of wears you out. Yeah. And I thought about, that's something we could do better. What if everybody retired full of vigor and health and enjoyed their retirement after 40 years as a craft person, a carpenter or an electrician or a plumber, and really enjoyed their retirement. I saw lifestyle, challenges with alcohol use and tobacco use, and a lot of people are overweight and they don't really pay attention to things like nutrition and stress and sleep and all those things. And I think, it becomes this, we've created this commoditized labor force. And I think that's why we're having a lot of trouble getting people to come into the industry, because we've commoditized them for so long. And it's like, let us treat you like crap for 50 years and then say, oh, come into the industry because it's such a wonderful place to be, So I think we need to really change that image. And that's going to start with every individual saying, I'm going to make the effort to treat especially guys with tools in their hands, by the way, the only people that create value on any project, treat them like gold and teach them and train them and help them and give them a good life and all those things we know we probably should do. And then people will start coming back to the industry, but they won't until that happens. And there's little inklings of that going on, but I think we need a wholesale effort, just like this whole push toward mental health and well-being. I think it needs to be an industry-wide thing, and I don't think it is quite yet.
Right. Yeah. And I think you're right. If we were to start at ground one right now and said, what do we have to have as part of the industry? Part of that, like you said, would be to have camaraderie, bring back the importance of, treating the labor force and, even executives.
Yeah.
As if they are irreplaceable, because they are. And
yeah, certainly right now they are. I think that part of the challenge with the labor force that I see is that, like you said, they've been treated so poorly for so long that now they have this power and they don't want to meet the executives in the middle because they're like, oh, no, I remember back, 10 years ago, I'm good with what we're doing. So I'm good with making hay while the sun is shining. And so, there's been so many mistakes over the years and decades, but I think we're kind of seeing some of those develop. It's a real struggle for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge struggle, and I have like executives say, well, there's no loyalty these days. Like they'll go over for a few bucks more, and I'll say, okay, are you loyal to them? Though?
Right.
Yeah.
Have you been loyal to them? Have you supported them? Have you, supported their life stuff, not just their work stuff and what product they're, that they're giving to you, but do you help them with their, how they're doing their finances or how they're struggling with maybe a new baby or maybe a health issue or a financial issue? Are you helping with that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you're not, then you're falling into that commoditized labor trap. And that, you're right, that gets into management as well. It's commoditized to the point where if you're going to commoditize me, then I'm going to go where I can get the most money, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know why I don't know why people can't figure that out. If you make people's lives better, why would they risk going anywhere else to work?
So true.
Yeah, so true, man. Yeah, and we had such a great preparation call, and I think a lot of our conversations came back to the same place, and it was, why do so many construction professionals struggle forming strong, real, and we used the term vulnerable a few times when we chatted, and rewarding relationships with their peers? Why do you think that is, and do you see it changing or improving in any way?
Well, it is improving, but it's a big issue. And I think part of it is just a cultural issue with men and emotions and that vulnerability. We're taught as men to not be vulnerable and to not need to ask for help and to be independent, to be strong, and then it's exacerbated by the industry because it's this hyper masculine environment where you just cannot be vulnerable and you can't ask for help and you can't not know something. And we are starting to shift that. I mean, guys like Cal Bayer and Sally Spencer Thomas, and they're really addressing that whole vulnerability, masculinity sort of issue. And it's so funny. I mean, I don't know if you guys read Brene Brown, but Brene Brown says, okay, vulnerability, like there's nothing heroic that takes place without vulnerability.
Right.
So you think about like a Marine that's out on the battlefield wounded, and there's another Marine going to go get him. Well, if there was nothing, there was no fire, no bullets, no danger, then he would just kind of stroll out there and grab the guy and bring him back. Yeah. What makes that heroic is the danger and the being so vulnerable and maybe losing your life during that thing that you're trying to attempt. That's what makes it heroic. So she looks at vulnerability as a very heroic act. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to shift that mindset and really have those frank discussions about what's going on there. And you know what I found is especially the guys in the field, they are so starved for this type of discussion that when you open that up and you make it safe and people start sharing those kind of things, something miraculous happens. Yes. And people connect and they respect each other and they know they're struggling with the same stuff. Mm-hmm. And they support each other. It's amazing to see.
Yeah.
Well, it's like like what you just said. It's like you struggle creating that loyalty. Well, there it is right there, because you're having a conversation they've been wanting to have, and they could talk about their family, their struggles, and then they go, that guy actually cares about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's something more than the money at that point.
Yeah. Right.
Totally. Absolutely.
They become human beings with real struggles and real lives. And like you said, it takes away the commoditizing of who they are.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a great exercise we've done is we just say, tell us about a time, to get a partner, tell them about a time when you struggled with something maybe in your childhood and how you overcame it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they get to tell their story.
Yeah.
And it's a hero's journey. I mean, it really is. It's truly a hero's journey because they've got something that there was an obstacle that they overcame in some way. So that is the hero's journey. So they get to tell that story. And so when people tell those kind of origin stories of themselves, they become vulnerable, number one. Number two, they become heroes. And number three, they connect with that other person because that other person's probably been through something similar.
Right.
And they can relate to that stuff. And so it's all of those things and wrapped into a real simple storytelling. I love storytelling as a way to break down those barriers and get people connected in a very human way.
Yeah.
Nice one. Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, I listen, I'm involved in a definitely a secondary way in the construction industry, but I watch it with Jeremy, and I watch how these the interactions with not only customers but with his contractors, and I noticed that there's something so appreciated when he does recognize, oh, they just had a baby, let's figure out a way to make sure that they have what they need here, or just even between themselves, knowing that there's so many issues that happen and arise, so many stressful interactions that come from them really not having a connective relationship between each other first.
Right.
And so, I'm a teacher in this year, 4th grade. And so that's the thing we do the first few weeks of school, academics to the side, because we know the importance of building that community. And so,
trust,
building the trust and giving people the chance to, the opportunity to tell their stories.
Right.
We have so much more in common.
Yeah, it's so important to tap into that. I've got a guy recently that came to me to be coached because he's being kind of a jerk and people don't like him and people are quitting because of him. And so we did some testing on the guy, emotional test and a physical test. We could see how your body's working. Well, it turns out this guy's in total burnout.
Yeah.
I mean, he is like really in trouble. And so our first coaching session, I'm sure he expected me to tell him, you better whatever.
Yes.
Start playing nice and all that. But I said, you know what? I'm really concerned about you.
Yeah.
It shows burnout. And are you feeling that? Here's some things you may be feeling. And I described some of the things about being overwhelmed and not being able to think clearly and not being able to navigate these difficult things that are coming up every day.
Yeah.
And he started tearing up.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know how you know all this, right?
Yeah.
So, but he was so vulnerable at that point. And I said, you know what? I don't care about all this other stuff. I want you to get the feeling better first.
Yeah.
Let's get a handle on eating better, getting your sleep, managing your stress. And then we'll revisit this other stuff down the road. But my guess is a lot of those things he's doing in terms of leadership stuff, it's because he's in burnout and his fuse is really short and he probably isn't handling those things as well as he should.
Yes.
Just that stuff is going to make him better, but then we'll address that other stuff when we need to. But I think he really appreciated that I wasn't there to fix him. I was there to just support him and help him to get out of this hole that he has been in. And he's married. He's got 3 small girls and that's a big issue, and they've just moved. And I said, you got all the stressors, man.
Right.
And you need to understand that this is taking its toll on you.
That somebody noticed, somebody validated. Hey, buddy, you got a lot on the plate.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about, and we'll mention it earlier, but with construction suicide trends on the rise and at alarming rates, what are some tips that you do provide your clients that help them then provide to their team to reduce stress or burnout or?
Well, I mean, of course, it's all about human connection. And first and foremost, it's about checking in often and just saying, how are you doing? And then follow that up with, no, really, how are you doing? And really have some honest conversations that way. I think that's a good start. And then start opening up those discussions of how are we doing and destigmatize that whole discussion about mental health and talk about how important it is. And you can even talk about the business case and how important it is. We want you to be productive and we want you to have energy at the end of the day for your family and yourself. So we're going to tell these food trucks to bring some healthy food in, and we're going to take a lot of breaks, and we're going to teach you some stress management techniques. And we even have some courses available. If I've got online courses on stress and peak performance, and they can even offer those kinds of things, just resources to, number one, start the discussion. And number two, if they're struggling, provide the resources.
Yeah.
Like even preventconstructionsuicide.com, the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. There's risk assessments there. There's all kind of collateral material there, but if people don't know it's there, it's kind of wasted. So
Right.
letting them know what's out there, supporting them in what their needs are, and asking the questions, and then listening to the answers.
Yeah.
See what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, construction executives, they need like a cheat sheet, right? I mean, those questions, those first questions are difficult for a lot of them. I can imagine, especially if they've been this kind of gruff personality, and then they start to like kind of open up. It must be a real difficult thing for a lot of these guys.
It is. And it not only difficult for them, but difficult for the people they're dealing with, because here's a guy I'm working with now whose theory is, if I'm not chewing your ass out, then you're doing a good job. Just shut up and just keep doing your job.
Just keep going.
Like, it's sort of like, I think his theory is, if I tell them they're doing a good job, they will get complacent
Right.
and then not be any good anymore.
That's not how the human condition works.
So, I tell him there's a lot of research behind it that is just totally not true at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're working on that. But in the meantime, he says, I feel stupid saying the good things now because I've never done it.
Yes.
So it feels manipulative and it feels weird. And I said, if you're just doing it to get them to do something, it is manipulative and it is weird. You probably shouldn't do that. Because it can backfire. But a sincere thank you for getting the Christmas party put together is something I think you can handle. And then they're going to probably look at you weird for the first, few months that you're doing this.
Yeah.
But eventually they'll go, I think Bill's changing. I think John's changing, So I think we'll see some of that, but it takes time. It takes time for people to get used to the new John. The new Bill, the new Jack,
Well, speaking of John and Bill, don't we need some like Sally and Betty Sue's managing, because they don't struggle with this, what we're talking about. I mean, they're just naturally more gifted in this way.
It's true. And I know I don't want to get into like gender stereotypes, but they're there for a reason.
Sure.
I have in my book the male versus female emotional intelligence profiles. Mm-hmm. And the males score much lower in empathy, interpersonal relationships, emotional self-awareness. Women tend to score significantly higher in those areas. Men score higher in things like assertiveness and independence and like problem solving. So yes, I agree. And I talk about that in my book, that we need more women in these management positions because they bring a whole different leadership style to this industry that's so needed. I mean, think about it. We're in this IPD and collaboration and lean. There are all these highly collaborative processes. Don't we want people that are better at collaboration and better? And you can see it. I mean, this is like in women's DNA for the most part. Again, I don't want to lump them into one big lump, but for the most part, like I'll tell you, this is the funniest example. I always taught leadership courses and it was all men, and the first night at dinner, what's the first question everybody asks each other? What do you do? Like, what projects have you built? And, and everybody's like,
pride,
establishing those hierarchies, and the $30 billion, job that I did, and they're doing all that. So the first, I went to this yoga retreat with a friend of mine named Helen that was putting this yoga retreat on. All women. I was the only guy. 35 middle-aged women and me. What do you think the first question they asked at the first night at dinner there? They said, "How do you know Helen?" Well, I've been friends with Helen for years. She was a patient of my wife's, and her daughter goes to my daughter's dance class, and they're making all these connections and seeing how everybody knows each other, and how do they fit within this sort of collaborative, society that they've created for this weekend at this retreat.
Right.
Men don't do that. They just don't naturally do that, and I think women mostly naturally do.
Yeah.
I bet no one even asked you what you did.
No, they never did.
I knew it.
You're just itching to tell them.
I wanted to say I built the $30 billion building, but no one cared.
Nobody cared.
That's great. That's a good
Jeremy and I get into this a lot, and this is, partly why we work so well together, because I always tell him, I'm like, hang on a second with your whole Betty Sue and Sally thing, because it has nothing to do with, or at least my feeling on it, it has nothing to do with your gender, and rather to do with your position in a given industry, or so executives in general. I think rather than looking at it and saying we need to hire more women for this position, I think we need to look at it and go, these are the characteristics that we need to be looking for when we hire an executive.
Right. True.
And if it fits, then it fits. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I think that's one of the things that makes your work so important, is that we are putting an emphasis on these characteristics and saying, hey, it's okay to do this. In fact, it will be better for your business in the long run. It's better for humanity.
Right. Yeah.
So
yes, yes, you're right. You're right again.
No. But I say this only for Jeremy.
Yes, I know.
No, I get that, and I think that's absolutely right. And a lot of companies they think they tell me, well, we're doing solely on credentials and performance. That's it.
Right.
And I say, okay, that works great if there was zero bias.
Yes.
But if there is bias, and guess what? There is. Everybody has bias. Then you may make some choices that you normally wouldn't have made because of your biases. And people do this all the time. It's not conscious. It's not like, let's keep women out of the C-suite or out of management positions. But there is some bias there. And I'll give you an example. A guy asked me a question at a conference. Hey, I've got this female project manager, and she's being really hard on the trade partners. And, how can I talk to her about, like tone it down a little bit? And I said, okay, my first question is, if this was a man, would you even ask this question? Right. No, you'd probably say, man, he's a badass. He's really tough on our trade partners. He really holds their feet to the fire. Right? So it's like you have to say, okay, that's a bias that you have, that a stronger woman is somehow labeled in some way and people don't cooperate with her. And I would give her the same leadership stuff I would give any man. If they're coming on too strong, then let's balance that a little bit.
Right.
Doesn't man, woman, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's just a leadership skill, that balance between assertiveness and empathy and motivating and being more compassionate, So
ensuring that you have all of that, you're bringing all of that to the table. Yeah, yes. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to get into some of your books because, man, you've written a lot of books. 8 books.
Yeah.
How do you find the time?
What's weird is I write books in my head and then I go away for a weekend. That's what I do. I'll leave Thursday and go to a cabin or an Airbnb or somewhere at the beach and I'll start writing. And if it's coming out, I just keep writing, and I'll write like 16, 18 hours a day and knock out a draft of a book in a weekend. Now, if I start writing and it's not coming very easily, I say, okay, it's not done yet. It's still cooking. So I'll just go walk on the beach and have a nice weekend and come back home.
Well, I mean, I'd like to start first with the book that you already have out, which is People-Profit Connection. And I want you to describe kind of some of the crossroads that you wrote about in the construction industry.
Yeah.
And I want to get into your newer books after that.
I think we are at a crossroads. And the subtitle of that book is How to Transform the Construction Industry by Focusing on People. I think we've lost this human element to and we, there's a lot of great tech out there. There's all this wonderful stuff for scheduling, for budgeting, for bids and creating all that and tracking that. But we have to get back to the human dimension of this. And it rears its ugly head in workforce development, in diversity and inclusion stuff, in successful and unsuccessful projects. I'll ask people all the time, think of the most successful project you've ever been on. What were the relationships like? Well, they were good. We were like a team and we liked each other and we hung out with each other. Okay, think of the worst project you've ever been on. What were the relationships like? Oh, they sucked. We hated each other. It was so adversarial. And it's like nobody ever says, that was the best project I've ever been on and we hated each other's guts. Those two things never go together.
Good point.
There is a correlation there. So I don't know why we don't focus on the relationship stuff to begin with.
Yes.
And so I think it's a focus on human stuff, taking care of people and respecting people. I think it's about really solving this workforce development issue by really valuing the people and cherishing them and loving them and helping them and supporting them, and then teaching everybody how to do that. And then we have to temper all these wonderful, technology things with the people stuff and kind of marry those together. And, I think collaboration is definitely the future, and IPD and those integrated project delivery methods and lean, highly collaborative.
Yeah.
I think those are all wonderful tools that we need to use. And I think if we think of sort of business as usual and we're doing okay, we're making our 2%, like who the hell has a business that makes 2%?
Terrible
right?
Right. Construction. Terrible.
So we could do a lot better with productivity. I mean, we've hovered around 50, 60% productivity for 50 years. We could make huge strides there if we get everybody involved on this process. And so I think it's about understanding the human part of this business and then exploiting that to its maximum level.
Yeah.
And asking people, what do they need and how can we make this project better? And if we don't do that, I think we're in big trouble. I think the Western, like North America construction companies, there's going to be Chinese companies coming in and European companies coming in that are going to just eat our lunch because they're figuring this stuff out.
I mean, you said it with the margin thing. Like that has always been a super struggle for me, especially like almost the bigger you get, the lower your margins are. And it's like, you can't put money and research and development and in people and all these things we're talking about will not happen with that margin. There's no money in there for somebody on staff to check in on your people. It's not going to happen. So they need to increase their prices and invest more in their people.
Well, and if we do this, an integrated project approach where we share the risk and share the reward, I think that's the answer to that. If you're in that low bid mentality and you get down to those horrible low margins, then, I'm sure some projects lend itself to that and some owners require that, but what a horrible way to do business.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary too, especially with the challenges we have in supply, labor.
Yeah.
Like, how do you operate in that such a thin failure rate?
It seems impossible. I mean, people do it, and God bless them. It's amazing. And that's the thing. Here's what I always talk about. So you got a project, high risk, lots of money, high stress. And guess what the people do on that project? They eat crappy food. They don't get enough sleep. They don't exercise. They don't support each other. They don't manage their stress. And then we expect them to perform at a high level.
Right.
And here's the amazing part. They do perform at a high level. They finish those projects and they make money, but it's coming at a huge cost.
Right.
And that's why all this stuff is starting to come to the forefront now, mental wellness and health and well-being. And we're destroying people's lives to get the results, to get 2%.
Yes.
Does that make any sense to anybody?
Yeah.
It really doesn't. No,
it's a quick reward, but with no regard for what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
To the people involved.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how when you get really busy, a year to 5 years go by really fast, and I think that's part of the problem is that it's such a crazy busy industry right now. It's so easy to kick the can down the road and say, we're going to deal with that next year. Mm-hmm. Well, 2 years just went by and it's worse, and now you have a heart problem, so it's so hard. I think you're right with the crossroads thing. Like, I really struggle with where we're at as an industry right now because some of these problems are not quick fixes, like almost all of them, right? Labor, people, these are things that are going to take a long time and mentality. And we need this new generation to come in and help with these problems, but yet that new generation's not coming in. Yeah. So we don't have the new blood to figure this out, collaboratively, and it's
right. Cool. Well, and when they do come in, all the old guys like me, say stupid things like, "Well, you have to pay your dues." You need to make copies of those specs. Sit at the copier 8 hours a day, because that's how I came up and I had to pay my dues before and you want to be project manager in 3 years? Well, that's impossible.
Right.
Yeah, that ain't going to happen. It'll take at least 5 to 10 years. And it's like, I always ask why.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, I tell the boomers, man, teach them everything you know and cut them loose. They'll figure it out. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're very smart. They will figure this out if you let them. But if you say, well, they need to do it this way because no, why?
Yes.
Why? Just because you did it that way or you've done it that way for 30 years, does that make it the right way? Probably not.
No.
You know, maybe things have changed in 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you have that perspective because it's true. As long as you, there are a few things you teach them. And then after that, I feel like we have these just brilliant, innovative minds in the younger, young workers right now.
Yeah.
Well, here's an example I give. You could get a group of millennials and say, design me a pedestrian bridge. You have 2 days to do it. And you got to get from here to here.
Yeah.
And they would do it. They'd figure it out. They would get on a Reddit room. They would go online. They would they'd Google pedestrian bridge design.
Right.
And then call some guy in India with a PE license and say, does this look good to you? And you know what I mean? They would figure that out and we never, I mean, the first project I did, we had Lotus notes and fax machines.
Yeah.
We didn't have the access to the entire world's knowledge in a phone.
Yeah,
right?
good point.
Yeah.
And they do.
Yeah.
So let
and
them
the
do
courage,
it.
the courage and the backing to try things, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, how you improve it. So it's really incredible, this new generation that's coming up.
Yeah, totally.
So in terms of, there's so many, stressful things going on in the construction industry.
Mm-hmm.
I love your approach, just seem very positive, and you look at things differently. Do you see positive trends as far as diversity, mental health, leadership? What do you see happening?
Oh yeah, people are talking about it. They're trying things and failing, and that's what we need. That we need to have the discussions and figure out what doesn't work and what's working well, and what about this, and how about this new thing here, and so I think we're having the discussions and making the mistakes which we need to do. I think we're making some, with the diversity stuff, it's really difficult to, with it's so complex with all the social issues that we have and the political issues that we have. It gets complicated really quickly. Right. So a lot of the initiatives that I've seen are focused more on awareness, like raising people's awareness of bias and things. And those are great and they're a good start, but they really don't change people's behavior very much. Right. So I think we need a little bit more in-depth, like some behavior models and some ways to get people to address those things when they do come up, instead of just sort of letting them lie or, not talking about them, because that's really comfortable, not saying anything. So I think we need to have some more difficult discussions around all of this stuff. Same thing with mental health. We're starting to destigmatize it a bit. Cal Byer's doing some amazing work there, but we gotta get comfortable being uncomfortable with all of this stuff and wade through the crap there's always crap to wade through and get to a place where we're starting to see some headway and we're seeing some progress and we're seeing some change, but I think we're starting that road. A lot of people are starting to wade into that mire, and we'll see how it comes out.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that positive ending. I think we needed that. I mean, it's all heavy stuff, but just the reason that we're wanting to go down this road as U.S. Construction Zone is we want to be part of that solution and we want to be part of that discussion. We don't want to just say, somebody else will figure it out. Cause I think that those somebody has got to be us now. And if our starting point is just having the conversation, I think we ought to be able to do that. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we have to solve it all in one day or in one podcast, but it does mean we have to say that we at least started something.
Right.
And so we'd like to support you in any way we can.
Thanks for that. I mean, it's just one person, one company, one little initiative at a time that you're starting to make that headway and have those discussions. And, I talk for the diversity part. I talk with a lot of the middle-aged white guys, and I are a middle-aged white guy. And it's hard sometimes because, we don't know what to do.
Right.
We don't want to make a mistake, and we don't want to come across as insensitive, and so we do nothing.
Yes.
A lot of times. So I think it's about, and then when something does happen, we feel guilty and blamed and
Yes.
angry and like, why are, so, and then when we ask for help, we get sometimes, well, you just need to figure it out. Like, it's not my job to teach you. And okay, I get that too. I understand that. I bet you're tired of trying to teach the white guys how to act in these situations. So we're sort of like, we don't know what to do, but we're going to do something. So let's just do something and make some mistakes and keep moving forward. That's what I tell the guys that I work with.
Awesome.
Yeah, that there's so much to learn, reciprocally. It doesn't have to be where one of us comes in knowing it all, there's so much to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks again, Brent. We wanted to end on a kind of a fun little note, our zone out little session here.
Okay.
We get to ask you a couple questions. And so the first one is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
From a very early age, I always wrote. So I think it would be a writer.
Dang, you did that.
Even like, I could remember in like third grade, we'd have to write stories, and I would always want to write poetry instead. So I developed this poetry thing, even at a very early age, like 8 years old, 9 years old. And so I love to write. I've written, all these books, and, I've written a lot of plays. I've had dozens of plays produced all over the country. And, so I'm a playwright as well. I haven't written my novel yet. That's my last thing I'm going to do. And maybe that's like my third career as a novelist, and knock out my great American novel. But writer, I think, would be that.
How interesting. That. Can I ask a follow-up? We rarely do this, but I'm just curious. Because I am a reader. I love reading and I love writing, but I'm nowhere near where you are. What is one of your favorite books? What is a book that's influenced you?
Fiction or nonfiction?
How about both?
Okay. Favorite fiction? Probably. Oh, that's so hard for me.
I know. It's so hard.
To Kill a Mockingbird, probably. Harper Lee.
Yeah.
Nonfiction. I don't know for sure now, but I'm reading a book that I think is going to be my favorite nonfiction book. It's called Sapiens. By a guy named Harari, and it's kind of the history of mankind, and he ties all this stuff together really beautifully. So I'm really enjoying that book. I'm a voracious reader, and I started a publishing company because publishers that I talked to about my books, they wanted 90% of all the money that was made off my book, and I said, why would I give you 90%?
Ouch.
So I started a publishing company.
What are we, construction?
Yeah.
That's right. This isn't construction. This is publishing. So I started a publishing company. We just published our 46th book. It's for people that are having trouble getting their book out. And we've published every genre you can name, memoirs and kids books and coloring books and business books and all kinds of cool stuff. So if you ever write your book, I'll help you get it published.
Well, I have a couple. I have a couple children's books.
Oh, cool.
Get in touch. Yeah. That's so interesting though. I love hearing from people who are readers. And if, for me, I look at it and I go, well, inevitably that the reading turns into just colorful, dense writing. And so, so thank you for sharing that.
I tell young people, if you want to be a PM in 3 years or VP in 5 years, read a book a week.
Yeah.
Read a book a week. And you'll get there, because you start getting all these ideas coalescing in your head, and you get creative new ideas, and it's really an amazing way to further who you are as a person and as a leader, I think.
Yes.
No doubt.
Love that.
No doubt.
So you have your own late night talk show. Who would be invited as your first guest?
This may sound weird, because I was thinking about like famous people, but I think I would do a panel discussion of like a bunch of trade workers.
Oh,
like get a carpenter and a plumber and an electrician and a drywall guy and a painter, and just ask them a bunch of questions like, what's your life like? And what's your work like? And how did you get into this business? And I bet most of them will say, well, my dad was in this business, or my uncle got me in this business. It's a real family incestuous kind of business to get in. And then what are your day-to-day struggles? And, you know, a lot of these guys live paycheck to paycheck. And I think we would develop a whole new appreciation for who they are as human beings, what struggles they're having, and be able to empathize a little bit better with them instead of, you know, I mean, construction workers, they get this bad rap about being these, you know, insensitive, kind of jerky guys. And I have not found that to be true. Once you kind of get past that initial, you know, crusty exterior, they're just incredible people with their own struggles and their own lives. So that's what I want to kind of teach people about.
Very good answer. I'm going to end with who was the most influential person in your life?
It's got to be my dad. He was so supportive of me and kind of guided me during I've been doing this for 20 years with this emotional intelligence and people skills. And he guided me and kind of told me how to present it well and was always there to listen and to help. And I'm the first person in all those 10 kids. I'm the first person to graduate from college in all those families. And it's because my dad that was a big dream of his, and he helped me get through that and paid for my tuition and really supported me the whole way to graduate from college. And I was the first person to ever do that. And I think he valued that. And because of his background of not being able to get to that, I think it was really important to him.
Yes.
So my dad, no
Very
doubt.
cool. Good answer.
What's his name?
Bob Darnell. And we have this primal safety coloring book, and all the profits go to the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention in my dad's name.
Wow.
Oh, very cool.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, I love that.
Dang it, Brent. Well, I appreciate, again, you being on. What's the best way? I know BrentDarnell.com. That's
BrentDarnell.com.
ELL.com. Is that the best way to get?
That's the best way. And if they'll go to BrentDarnell.com/resources, they can get our free EI test and our primal safety coloring book toolbox topics. And I think there's a couple other tests on there. And there's one of my books, the Tough Guy Survival Kit, is on there that they can download and just enjoy.
Very cool. Well, again, we appreciate it. We love the discussion. We know everyone else is going to love it as well. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Happy holidays to you and your family.
Same to you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You might have just heard a gulp from Valerie.
It's water.
Yeah, it's just the water. Wow, what a great discussion with Brent. What a cool person. And we were just saying when we hit stop on the recording, and Val said, "Another great person." And I said, "You say that every time." And he is no exception. He is awesome. And what he's doing for the construction industry is needed. And like I said, we had this pre-conversation, and we're both sensitive creatures. We could talk about meditation and yoga and some things that maybe a lot of guys in construction wouldn't talk about. But I was like, this is a perfect guest to really start the conversation with our network when people who are listening to this new ideas.
Right. I think, same. I appreciate, I'm drawn to people like that. I know it's very different, but than maybe what you would typically find in the construction industry. And that's me being stereotypical. I also am guilty of this, Jeremy.
Yes.
But
yes, you are.
Very much so, I'm sure. But I'm drawn to people who can look at business and say, and go from the understanding that money is important. It's important to be after the drive and the money and the success and the growth. But as a foundation, you have to have, in order to build a successful and, long-term business, you have to have someone who invests in the people. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you inevitably will run into burnout. And I think that, Brent's just an excellent example of somebody who is so comfortable in his own skin and knows that he has something to say of immense value.
Yeah. Yeah, and the right time too. It's a good time to start the conversation. We talked to Sally Spencer Thomas, and she's really talking more about the suicide part of our industry, and then you have Brent Darnell, who's on the prevention side, and you need every aspect to be pushing out their message now, because the time is now. We gotta turn this trend the other direction, and we're not going to do it without people and leaders like this to tell us what to do. Really, honestly, where to go, the resources, what books to read. So yeah.
For me, it's just a reminder of how diverse we are as human beings. We all have, because I'm in education, I'm a huge believer in the theories of multiple intelligences, Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, and that belief that that everyone has their own unique strengths. And I think in the business industry, you have books like Strength Finders.
Okay, do I need to write that down?
If you want to take notes.
It's in there. It's in there.
But there are people who excel in interpersonal, aesthetic, mathematical, and so, and so on and so forth. And so I just really felt that the conversation with Brent, he touches upon all of that. And he really is someone who has a talent in those interpersonal skills, and sounds like his dad did as well. And so how lucky are we that we get to benefit from learning from him? Awesome.
I wish I was as mentally healthy as he is, because it just feels like he's touching all of those aspects of mental health.
Now you have him as a resource.
I'll probably be emailing him later today.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening to In the Zone. I am Jeremy.
And I'm Valerie.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to In the Zone with Jeremy and Valerie Owens. Be sure to subscribe to In the Zone and stay in the know with the best minds in the construction industry. To nominate an innovator or change maker in the construction industry, connect with your management peers, and stay up to date with construction industry news, be sure to visit usconstructionzone.com.